So I wanted to sit down with David and talk a little bit about original thinkers so you could get a better idea of who they are and where they came from. So David, great to have you today. Thanks for joining.
Hey, what a pleasure, Jim. Thanks for taking a real interest in what we're doing.
I love what you're doing. So why don't you talk a little bit about where original thinkers came from and kind of your goals and your tribe and what original thinkers is all about.
Original Thinkers is a multimedia platform for emerging public intellectuals. It's a sort of that's our basic line, and that manifests in a couple of different ways. One is an ideas festival, which we have coming up, and I'm so excited that you're coming and bringing a bunch of your folks. And that'll be first weekend in October. And what we do is we really look at ideas through the lens of speakers, film, art, performance, and try and really focus on individual ideas. You can see behind me, there are a bunch of these things with Post-its. If a big wind comes through here, we'll have to start programming again with all the Post-its on the floor. But really, it's can we take a look at an individual idea? And I think right here is how do we heal? And How Do We Heal is a really beautiful show featuring a woman named Dr. Hale Sedigizeda, who is a forensic traumatologist. And so she'll speak about her work in Las Vegas with trafficking abusers and all these other things. Then we're going to show a really beautiful short film called The Bears of Pine Ridge. And that'll features this incredible woman named Tiny, who's fully disrupting teen suicide on the reservation. So we put those different elements together. And then we'll have a conversation afterwards. And we also have coming with us is a woman named Jackie Cantwell, who has she's an incredible bowl performer. And so, at the end of this, we'll have this really lovely sort of healing ceremony that she'll lead. And so that's a heavier, show. Next to us, we have Joy is an Inside Job, which is a beautiful film by Luisa Hoyos, featuring the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, talking about joy and from their 2015 meeting when they got together for His Holiness's 80th birthday. So what we're about is looking at these ideas and what we like to say are ideas that make us more human. We're not a tech festival. We're not that tech doesn't matter. Of course, it's critical to our world, but we feel there are a lot of avenues to explore that. We want to explore stories and recognize in those stories our own original thinking. I started this company, kind of started in 2004 when I bought originalthinkers.com, and I saw it as a platform for films. But I had a terrific job for a while here in Telluride, where I live, running a film festival. And so I stepped away from Original Thinkers, but when I left that, I brought it back and have been really developing the company for the last 4 years pretty seriously. And this is our fourth festival coming up.
Part of what's really interesting to me is you've got like such a different array of people, right? Like really different areas. So it's like there's a cross-pollination of different fields, and you're genuinely looking for original thought, but it could come from anywhere. It could be a scientist, or it could be something that's more political, or it could be something that's medical, or, it could even be something that's financial, right? Like, so that to me is interesting. How important of a part of original thinkers is that? And then also talk a little bit more about the audience and who the people are who really follow you.
Yeah, so we really do try to explore from a bunch of different ways. And that's really critical, that if we can look at an individual sort of kernel of an idea and think of it, not necessarily 360, but from these multiple perspectives, I think we get so much more out of it. And we're thrilled to have the other thing we're doing is, of course, trying to understand coming out of the pandemic. Of course, we're not quite coming out of it naturally, but we are trying to understand what this new world can be. One of my favorite shows is we have called Into the After, which is a combination of speakers looking at how we emerge. And one of those speakers you introduced us to, who we're really grateful, Jennifer Grancia, who's the CEO of Engine Number One, that incredible hedge fund that put 4 different directors on the Exxon board, there's original thinking, and that's really important to come back to is what does that mean, and how do we see it, and how do we celebrate it? And so for us, that's just a critical part of what we're trying to do. And I'm a filmmaker and been involved with a bunch of documentaries. So I also really look to film and say, okay, what can we find in stories that will take us to a different place? And movies are magic, we know that. And so you put all these different elements together, some music, some movies, some speakers, and we just create a dynamic that I think is really different than a lot of the other things that are out there, and has a different perspective.
We're obviously, you alluded to COVID, and we're in very interesting times right now. And it's a really interesting time to put on an in-person event. So talk about that, and talk about kind of the logistics of the new normal, and how you're running the festival this year, and how it will be different than it's been in past years when it was in person.
First of all, we're taking it really seriously. This is no joke. The Delta variant is fierce. And so what we're looking at here, as we talk, we're a month out, a little more, and yeah, I'm nervous for sure. But at the same point, we have a county that's highly vaccinated, and we're leading the way in Colorado, San Miguel County here in Telluride. We have venues that take this seriously, and we'll do vaccine mandates for guest speaker staff. We'll do testing here in Telluride because a lot of people will be traveling. We'll be, and I think we're going to institute masks in the theater for non-speakers. I just think, I think it just makes sense. The other thing is, as we've seen with this pandemic, is a month is actually quite a long time. And so we're going to be monitoring what's happening. And if we go into a space where we say, oh boy, here's a really serious, it's getting more serious rather than less serious, we have a terrific venue. We're working with two venues. One is the Sheridan Opera House that has water, has air purifiers throughout, and hand sanitizer, and they're very up in protocol. And then we have another venue called the Telluride Transfer Warehouse, which is 4 walls but no roof. And so if we have to shift a bunch of our programming there, we will, and we'll adjust and recognize that we have to shift. The other thing is the theater holds 240. We'll probably have not quite half that, but maybe a little bit more. And we're looking at the numbers to say, okay, how can we give people space there relatively? But it's unnerving. I got to be honest, owning a public facing events business in the middle of a pandemic is not ideal. That being said, we need this, and I really feel strongly that, this was built out of a belief that we need to gather, that the digital atomization of our society was not helpful and was not productive. And we connect with each other, especially here in these mountains. This is Telluride, Colorado, and it's stunning here. And knock on wood, we've been really fortunate not to have the intense wildfire smoke that's permeating so much of the American West. It's a beautiful blue sky day here. And again, just like the pandemic, things could shift, but we've been fortunate on that front. And living in a place like this, a lot of what we want to do is get people outside. And so for us, the shows that we're doing that you see behind me are really critical to our whole landscape, but so are the tea treks that we'll organize, where you hike up to this beautiful promontory and have a tea ceremony. So are, some of the other stuff that we're doing that we think has real meaning and are, more important now than ever.
Yeah, I know all of our people are extremely excited to be getting back together physically. We haven't done it since 2020. And so thank you for providing us the excuse and the opportunity to come. And we're excited to kind of mix and mingle with your crowd and enjoy the content. So if you're giving people who have never been to Original Thinkers, like one thing to be really excited about or look forward to about Telluride, what would that be?
I think it's the stories we're bringing in. Each of these sticky notes behind me is a story. story of somebody who's achieving, who's defying odds, and we say this, who's building a world that works for everyone. You know, we really believe that we can get we can hear these stories and become better citizens, better people of this planet. And I think that's what we need. We need to hear from each other, whether it's musicians or artists or scientists or Jennifer Grancio from Engine Number One. And we have really, you know, just tremendous people coming in across the board. And I think when we spend time with those stories, it changes us. You know, it always has, and it always will. And that's what we're really working towards.